there was this fellow named Achan. And Achan forgot one of the commandments, the 10th one to be exact. You remember the 10th commandment? Thou shalt not covet. And yet, Achan saw a few things inside of Jericho that he wanted to have for his own. Namely, he saw a very ornate robe. He saw 200 shekels of silver and 50 shekels of gold, and he took them for his own. Achan made a choice, and it led to the death of his entire family. So that when Israel went on their first outing in battle to conquer a little more of the land, when they went up to Ai to fight, they were defeated. Joshua couldn't understand why they were defeated. They were fully obedient. Well, 99.9999% of them were obedient. Achan was hanging on to sin. He had been disobedient. So the Lord told Joshua, call the people forward by tribe and clan and family to find the one who was disobedient. And so the tribe of Judah came forward. And the Lord from that selected the clan of Zerah, and from that the family of Zimri, and from that the man Achan, and he confessed. What was the penalty for Achan's disobedience? His sons, his daughters, his cattle, his donkeys, his sheep, and his tent were gathered together. And after Achan was stoned, all of that was burned. The lesson? A hard lesson to learn. And hopefully we don't have to learn it personally, is to keep our hands off of the things that belong to God. To release from our grasp the stuff in our lives that belongs to the Lord. Thou shalt not covet. And the way to do that is to allow God to have God's stuff. I find a wonderful comparison or contrast, if you will, between Achan and Rahab. Rahab. Achan turned out to be a disobedient Israelite. Rahab, a faithful Canaanite. And both of those seem like oxymorons. They're things that don't go together. The Israelites should be obedient, the Israelites should be faithful, and we might anticipate the Canaanites being disobedient. And yet, here's Rahab, not only a faithful Canaanite, but a faithful Canaanite woman who happened to be a prostitute. How much further from God could she seem to be? And yet, she made the choice of obedience. She hid the spies. When Rahab made that choice, it led to the survival of her entire family. Do you see what happens as one person makes a choice, how it affects those around them? Achan's choice led to the destruction of his whole family, of everything he owned, including his tent. But Rahab saved her whole family, because the promise of the spies as they escaped was, when we come to conquer Jericho, gather your whole family into your house, and if they are here, they will be spared. We can only be responsible for those that you gather in your own house, and we will come and take you to safety. So Joshua, after all this is over, after they've conquered the lands around them, and it seems very destructive. The tales we read of battle after battle of Israel, conquering people after people, nation after nation. We wonder why. But these are peoples who have been disobedient to the Lord, and God is making a place. He's creating a home for his people where he can dwell in safety and comfort with the people of Israel. The covenant at Shechem is not only a second chance for Israel, but it's an opportunity for each of us to choose this day whom we will serve. And we can choose because obedience is a choice. I mentioned earlier that following God's will is kind of like those salmon swimming upstream. It's the harder way to go, but it's the calling that's within them. It's innate in who they are as salmon, to swim upstream, to find that breeding ground. It is not the way our coworkers might choose. It's not the way our classmates might choose. It's not the way our neighbors would commend us for living. But to choose to follow the Lord, to choose obedience to God after meditating on his word so that we have come to know his will, it's the way God would have us go. It was hard for me to really comprehend what this meant as I read the following statement. If we find ourselves going with the current of culture and society, then it is quite possible we are swimming counter to the will of God. And I don't think that's one we can fully grasp here in this room. And it's one that's going to stick with me for a while. If we find ourselves going with the current of culture and society, then it is quite possible, not guaranteed, okay? There may be exceptions. But if we find ourselves going with the current of culture and society, then it is quite possible we are swimming counter to the will of God. If things are going easy because everyone around us is commending us for the way we're going, then we might just not be swimming upstream. We might not be following that calling inside of our lives that calls us to go the opposite direction. It would be much easier for the salmon to go downstream to spawn. And sometimes they get tired and they give up and they go along with the flow of the current. But the challenge for us is to remember that obedience to the will of God is a choice, and the right choice is often the hard choice. So the covenant at Shechem is not only a second chance for Israel, but an opportunity for each of us to choose this day whom we will serve. The question I will take with me, and I invite you to take with you, is this: will you choose obedience? Amen.